Sekeres Price for Monday, June 17th, 2024, coming in from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center downtown. If you're looking for your next meeting space, contact The Wall for all your event needs. Sales at wallcenter.com. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Grady Sass, Hinton Switches conducting things. Big show coming up, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Nissan at the Richmond Auto Mall has the brand new 2024 Aria. You're starting to see a lot of buzz about this electric vehicle. That's because it's got storage space. It can do a lot of the things you want a BC car to do. It's the Aria. Lease or finance it from 1.99%, which is a smashing deal. It's all Applewood Nissan in Richmond. It's at the Auto Mall. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll question today: what would you prefer this summer? Revamp the roster, run it back? Vote Sekeres Price on our Twitter or X and YouTube feeds. And we say this, Blake, June 17th, 2 weeks away here from the start of free agency, week and a half away from the NHL entry draft. And of course, some of these existing free agents that you have exclusive negotiating rights with, well, that time is starting to dry up. Look, you can define revamp the roster or run it back as you see fit. I voted run it back because I would like to see them bring back the three defensemen of consequence that are UFAs or RFAs in the case of Filip Hronek. I think if you bring back Hronek, Zadorov, Myers, that with a healthy Thatcher Demko, and of course what we saw from Artur Shilovs in the playoffs, I think that baselines you for next year. I still think you're a pretty good hockey club because I think you're going to be very good at goal prevention. The other thing I think is, despite all this cap space the Canucks have, and I know people are now talking like, oh, they have great cap space, in comparison to the rest of the league. Okay, but they also have bigger ticket free agents to sign or to go out and have to replace. I'm just not sure they have the cap space and ability this year, this summer, to put the finishing touches on a contending club. So for me, revamping the roster is easier said than done. And I'm not necessarily sure it gets you that much further ahead if, say, you sign Guentzel and become a top-heavy club because you can't replace some of the other UFAs you have. That's how I find it at the very least.
Yeah.
But
You're right about the revamping of the roster and the cap space thing, and that the Hronek money is not included is included in the cap space section, but it's, of course, it's spoken for effectively, right? So it's a little bit misleading there, but revamping the roster doesn't include creative decisions on Ilya Mikheyev, like we talked about on Friday, which can add to the cap space and allow for further changes to the roster and better allocate dollars that allows you to be better than you were last season. And it's why, as much as I love Nikita Zadorov, and I jokingly did tweet out during the playoffs after he scored maybe his second or third tight angle goal there, give him all the money. I don't mean give him all. I mean, give him money if it begins with a 4, certainly. Begins with a 5, I start to get a little bit more cold feet, because I think you can find better, more well-rounded defensemen that kitty bar the door for you come playoff time, and maybe flip them over onto the right side. Get a guy on the right side that effectively has the same effect on your team, but makes you a more balanced defensive squad. So I think change is probably more tantalizing for me than it is for you.
And I hear what you're saying. Again, it's not going to be a perfect either or on either of these answers, which is why we're telling you to define it as you see fit.
But there's enough question marks that where are you heading more? The majority of these guys coming back, or the majority of these guys not coming back?
That's right. So just for example, the back of a cocktail napkin. Hronek at 7.5. Zadorov at 5.5. Myers at 2. You got to re-sign Shilovs, let's say $1 million. That gets you to about 17 million of your cap space. And you got about 24 and change left, depends on how you slice it. Then go on out and get a couple of wingers. I'm just using the Carolina guys as an example. We talked about Teravainen. We've talked about Martinook. Get those guys in for $8 million. To me, that's more run it back than it is revamp. You've made some additions. You made some additions at the position, an area of weakness, particularly on the wing. That gets you roughly where you're roughly to the cap ceiling. And of course, you're going to make some decisions in training camp as well.
Yeah, you split that right down the middle pretty good because you ran back the defense,
right?
But you're not running back Joshua and Bluger and Lafferty.
But I'm keeping more than I'm getting rid of in terms of the primary contributors.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Yeah,
you know, if you want to quibble with the likes of Lafferty and Bluger and others, hey, so fair enough. I'm not going to sit here and get overly semantic with regards to the two options, but yeah, I think if you baseline your defensive performance by bringing back most of the defensemen who you know worked.
And I guess Lindholm is also part of the deletion there with you as well.
Well, I mean, I think Lindholm is gone.
Yes, yeah.
Ship is.
But I mean, that's a quantity of forwards. So you basically ran back the D, you didn't run back the forwards,
right?
And that may be the direction that they want to go. But you do wonder about that right side of D. You know, is there a want to get two certified right shot defensemen in the top four?
Yeah, and actually, we're going to get to that here in a moment. Interesting piece from the Daily Hive and Noah Strang. But let's get to our top story. Nikita Zadorov. Is this the long goodbye? Or is there still a chance for the big hulking Russian defenseman to re-sign with the Vancouver Canucks? I know Elliotte Friedman doubts it now. Rick Dhaliwal had reported this is the big weekend with the last final best offer from the Canucks to Nikita Zadorov. Frank Saravelli told us on Friday he thought it was more likely that Zadorov blinks than the Vancouver Canucks do, and thought that there might be not quite the riches that Nikita Zadorov hopes in free agency. So, look, the other files, Lindholm, we think is gone. It's not just even a fair contract, fair term matter with Elias Lindholm. You can't promise him top two minutes in terms of center iceman. He would slot right now as your third center iceman. I think that's going to be the deal breaker there. Zadorov is another matter, and of course, Hronek is a very big matter between now and next Friday when the NHL entry draft comes our way.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Hronek is the biggest matter because, you know, he has so much value to either you or somebody else, and so it carries with the big consequences. Zadorov's an emotional matter, like, and I think. And I think for fans and the club alike, not that the club has a lot of
player, I think, and the player and the family as well.
All three factions,
very emotional. Yeah,
all three factions have a lot of emotions tied up, and I don't mean that the team is so emotionally tied to him, and that may be somewhat true, but they know that the emotion that he brings to the team, and I don't even just mean the jokiness in the clubhouse. Obviously, it's about that certain swagger. The chirpiness that he has out on the ice. There is not, you know, on the defense core, not a lot of guys like him. In fact, there's nobody like him, despite Filip Hronek telling, who is he telling that you're going to be golfing in a couple of days at the end of the regular season? Remember he was chirping at somebody at the end?
Someone on Calgary.
It was a Calgary? Yeah, that's what it was. You know, that's not Hronek's game. That was right time, right place for Filip Hronek. That is Zadorov's game. And when you are 6'15" and, you know, as big as you are, you can get away with that sort of stuff, and there's not a lot the other side's going to do about it. You'll love to have that player. The question is, what is it worth? And that's what the Canucks, I think, are trying to figure out here.
5 by 5.5. You do that deal?
5 years, $5.5 million.
That's where I'm coming in.
I would rather it be 5. I'd rather 5 by 5.
No, that would be my last and best. 5 by 5.5 gets you out of the player at age 34. 5.5 should look better with the cap going up, so long as Zadorov maintains his level. If you get 1 year there where it's way past prime, that's something I'm willing to live with. So long as you get 3 really excellent years, like the sort of years that we saw this year, and particularly that playoff performance.
4.5 by 6 is the same amount of money. Could you sucker him into that?
I just get the sense they're looking for something that begins with a 5.
The same amount of money.
No, I know it is.
Yeah.
But that spits him out at, you said 6 years?
Yeah.
That spits him out at 35.
Yeah. And you're hoping 6 years down the road, that's a really small percentage of the cap.
Yeah.
And he's your sixth defenseman at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he's pretty a buyout candidate.
Yeah, possibly.
And
lots of signing bonus.
And of course, if you're just quibbling, if you're just thinking, oh, that's the one bad year of the contract, we know how managers think.
Mm-hmm.
Am I here 6 years from now?
Yeah.
Do I even care?
And here's the other thing. I'm willing to go to that level because for my money, Nikita Zadorov should be your second pair left side guy next year.
Mm-hmm. That's what you'd be expecting with that money.
Yes. But that's what he became during the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, I was not for a big, long Zadorov extension before the playoffs. There's still a part of me that looks at it and goes, it's a luxury paying a third left side defenseman. You're better off paying a right side defenseman, something that you've been arguing. Of course, it doesn't always work out that way in terms of the timeline, right? Like, that's one of the bigger things that you're fighting now.
Yeah.
As a manager, it's okay. I'd rather spend my money on right side guys, but if July 1 comes or even the chit chat window before July 1 comes, and you're looking at the right side guys that you've red circled, and you're recognizing that it's going to cost you more than you would prefer to pay on those guys, because it always does in free agency, not to mention the fact there's going to be massive demand for these players because suddenly teams have cap space again. So the market you're competing against is larger than what it would have been in previous season. We've a little bit lulled to sleep here in terms of free agency the last few years because there's been so little money and cap space in the system that the bidding hasn't been quite as competitive as we may remember before the pandemic. So that's just a dangerous game to play. Like, that's a game where you could be left holding the bag, or that's a game where you can be left holding on to a contract that looks even worse than being able to re-sign one of your guys here in the buildup to free agency and keep him off the open market.
Yeah, that's the thing. You never get to have it in that perfect scenario where you've got the cap space and you've got the ability to court the guys that you want, but you're not going to lose out. You're not going to be left holding the bag or without a chair in the game of musical chairs. And yet, the one thing they do have past July 1st, like, they could re-sign Zadorov to a number at or near the numbers we're talking about. They could kick the can down the road on Hronek, see if they could go out and sign a Pesce or a Montour. If they're successful there, well, either you got the best defense core by a country margin and you don't worry about signing some of these free agent forwards, or you trade Filip Hronek knowing you've got a security blanket. You can see what kind of business, because you don't have to declare that
the only problem
arbitration until July 5th.
Yeah, the only problem is what you get back for Hronek, right? Like, you're getting nickels and dimes on the dollar in terms of what you paid, because other teams are in the same boat with re-signing the player. And, look, it's not an enviable situation. And it's one that I think that Steve Yzerman in Detroit didn't want to have to stare down, that the early cues from the player and the agent were that they wanted to go to market, and if they weren't going to market, they were signing for something that was clearly market rate. And so the Canucks have gotten a fantastic season out of Filip Hronek, and now they may have to pay the piper there.
Well, I think Steve Yzerman knew that counting stats would put this player into a certain bracket. And I think Steve Yzerman was unsure if he was that kind of a player worth that money.
Well, and of course, Moritz Seider is an RFA this year for Steve Yzerman.
Yeah.
Like, that's a contract that is going to blow Hronek out of the water.
And that's the priority. He's the special talent. Again, I'm not trying to diminish Filip Hronek. He's a really good defenseman.
Yes, he is.
But he's
no Seider.
But he's no Seider.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say he's special in any one attribute.
Nope.
And So you've got to be careful how much you give to a defenseman that you're not really sure how you'd even describe him. Like, how do you describe Filip Hronek? I don't even know.
He's a top pair right side all situations defenseman, though, and that's the scarcest commodity out there. And if I'm making a mistake on spending on a position, a profile, that's the mistake I'm willing to make. Like at the NFL draft, these teams get killed taking quarterbacks who don't pan out. Well, you're going to make a mistake on a quarterback or on a right guard? I'd rather swing on the quarterback than the right guard.
Let me ask you
I'd rather swing on the all situations right shot defenseman than take a swing on a third line center.
Let's say tomorrow.
Or a middle six winger.
Let's say tomorrow the Canucks sign Filip Hronek to an 8x8 deal.
Yeah.
Is that a tradable contract the day that you sign it?
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. Yes. It's cost certainty for the foreseeable future on a top pair, all situations, right shot defenseman that the contract ends at age 34. I'm not mistaken. He's 26.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a tradable contract instantly. Yes, I do.
Because if they are of the same mind, and I'm on the fence
now, he's probably going to get no move, no trade, Blake. Before you explore this too far, there's not many deals of that order that don't come with some kind of trade protection.
Except this is where the negotiations happen of you can get no trade, no move, but it's not happening for
8x8.
It's not going to be in the first year anyway, right? Because he's only 26. So I don't think he gets that trade. He can't get that trade protection until next year anyway, I believe, much like Elias Pettersson. So they'd have 1 year of unprotected, I believe.
Only players 27 or older with 7 accrued seasons are eligible for no trade or no movement clauses.
Yeah, so he doesn't have that. So you're going to have 1 year unprotected at the very least, and maybe you negotiate another one at the either one end of the spectrum, either at the beginning of the contract or the end of the contract. But if they're of the same mind, the Canucks are, that they could sign him and yet he still remains tradable, well then, the risk is sort of taken away, isn't it? Because if you find yourself in a more enviable position, you get some right-sided defenseman that you had your eye on, there's a chance to get some safety there.
Patrick Johnson writing in the Province that Brock Besser, who shares an agent with Jake Guentzel, the apple in everybody's eye in free agency, would like Guentzel as a teammate. Very interesting story, actually. The Canucks brought up Guentzel's name in 2016 with the Penguins when Pittsburgh was sniffing around Dan Hamhuis. And that, of course, was a Jim Rutherford-managed team. That was the deadline, you remember, when the Canucks had Hamhuis and Verbata as expiring UFAs. Didn't trade either of them. Hamhuis had no trade protection. Dan has told us the story in the past that he was going to a couple of teams. And Peach also brings up the possibility. Would you trade a middle round pick right now to Carolina for the exclusive window on Guentzel?
I had this thought, not so much about Guentzel, more about Pesce, because that triggers everything we just talked about with regards to Hronek and that sort of thing. I don't know. With the relationship you've got with Jake Guentzel, you'd think you're going to get the ear. You're either in the window or at July 1st. Jake Guentzel's going to have a conversation with Jim Rutherford and Patrick Golvey.
No question.
So I don't think you need to pay.
I don't know. Irv had that report that he's, it's going to be an American team, not considering Canada. Then it was refuted. I mean, that to me, that reeks like the agent going, no. We want all the teams in there, driving the price up. I just wonder if the Canucks are viewed as as the stalking horse there. That's the team they're going to use to drive up the price tag with somebody else.
I think the way I saw that whole story going down is that he maybe have intimated that to somebody at some point, but then when further pressed on, he realized, well, no, I would talk to Jim and Patrick. I've got.
Sure. But, I'd be very surprised if they were his first choice. And if he's not their first choice, if they're not his first choice, then you're staring down the barrel of, do you want to go above and beyond? And best, the other best, the offer that he's willing to sign.
Do you have any reasons why you think they wouldn't be their first choice?
Well, just an American player has played his entire career in the States, and as Irf reported, more likely an American team here than a Canadian team.
Again, half the American national teams on the Canucks.
Right.
I think that guys like Quinn Hughes and JT Miller could probably convince them that it's a great
Well,
place
I mean,
to play.
I think they can lobby, but yeah, I'm sure Besser could too. But yeah, Americans, they just don't see outside their borders all that well, Blake. So what's my knee-jerk position on American players is they're more likely to want to sign, because they have wives and girlfriends and parents. And Canada?
I think maybe to some degree, but the American players at that level also know that it's like being a soccer player and playing in the Bundesliga, but you know that somebody in the Premiership is available to you. Nothing wrong with the Bundesliga, but you know where they take it the most serious, and that is in the Premier League. So I think they also know that. I think more often than not, it's Eastern Seaboard guys that have always played on the Eastern Seaboard, have always had, and it's just easier living on the Eastern Seaboard.
Well, it's certainly easier travel.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do I think they're going to be in there on Guentzel? Yeah. Would I be surprised if he signs with the Canucks? Also, yes. Would I be surprised if he signs like a reasonable contract that we can all shake our heads, look at and nod in agreement, say, yeah, that's an appropriate contract? I'd be very surprised if that's the case. I think if you're getting Guentzel to come out here, I would suspect you're going above and beyond.
But I think that's the case. I think wherever he signs, he is the apple of the entire UFA class.
Well, Reinhart, but yes.
I don't think Reinhart gets to July 1.
Okay.
So,
because you think he's going to be lifting a trophy tomorrow,
or whether they win it or not, they probably will. I think the Panthers are going to make sure that this guy's not going anywhere.
An important part of their team.
Yeah. So, of the class, I think he's going to pick and choose whatever he wants at a very large number.
There was a report this weekend out of Calgary. Now, we had talked about Guentzel. We had talked about Guentzel and Reinhart as being the two big fish in free agency, both of them wingers. And we had talked about, okay, look, if it's not going to be one of those two guys, what's the next tier of winger? Because we know the Vancouver Canucks have to get better there. So one of the names that came up, Jake DeBrusk, who has seemingly forever been in trade rumors. He's a UFA this summer. There was a report out of Calgary this weekend that the Alberta teams and Carolina are in the mix, or would be in the mix, for Jake DeBrusk if he makes it to July 1st. And understandably so. I mean, grew up in Edmonton, played in Edmonton minor hockey. Of course, his dad, Louis, if you don't know, calls the Oilers games as well as working for Hockey Night in Canada. So that makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah, and he's got what a lot of the players in this class don't have at that level, in a little bit of edge and pugnacity.
I think some in Boston would have hoped for more edge, but when we brought his name up last week when we were talking about the UFA wingers, and if not Guentzel, Reinhart, who would you like to see the Canucks land? DeBrusk got a lot of love.
Who's got the most offense out of Bertuzzi, Mantha, and DeBrusk? Who gives you the most goals next year?
Well, Bertuzzi was 21 goals this past year. DeBrusk was 19. Both of them played 80 games. And then Mantha was your third guy.
Yeah, he was in the 20s, I think, right?
Mantha was 23 and 74. So Mantha gave you the most pure goals. Mantha gave you 67.
But I don't think DeBrusk treated like a scorer. Like, was he,
DeBrusk, it was 59 points. Bertuzzi was 64 points and Mantha was 67 points.
So they're very similar. And those are the three guys that have strength and physicality along with some scoring touch. I don't recall DeBrusk. I'd love to see his PP one time. Like, if it was was he given opportunities to inflate those numbers even more so? But all three are intriguing to me. DeBrusk seems like the most consistent performer of the bunch. I know there's been a lot of complaints about the dry spells for the other two guys. So
DeBrusk was the 7th most used power play forward for the Boston Bruins. Yeah, he played a minute 41 on the power play. They went Pasternak, Marchand, Zacha, Van Riemsdyk, Geekie, Coyle.
That sounds like PP2 to me.
Get to Jake DeBrusk.
Yeah. Meanwhile, could the Canucks probably use him on PP1? They probably could.
Well, and then that's one of those interesting scenarios that if you are in on the player, and we don't know there's interest yet in the player, but if you are in on the player and the player is coming down to one of your division rivals or you, right? That's when you have to make the tough decision. I remember Milan Lucic all those years ago was coming down to Vancouver and Edmonton, right? I can remember Jim Benning just sounding crestfallen that day that the product of East Van wasn't coming home here on July 1st. They pivoted to Louis Eriksson. Anyways, I mentioned this Daily Hive article from Noah Strang and UFA targets. Brandon Duhaime, we've known of the interest since prior to the deadline. Saravelli said he was, one of the players the Canucks were eyeing for a fourth-line physical agitator role. Sherwood and Trennan, the two Nashville forwards, make this list. And, interesting because Trennan can play the middle a little. Colorado used him in the middle. And you might be looking for some help down the middle if you're waving goodbye to Elias Lindholm. And I think you're waving goodbye to Elias Lindholm. Not to mention the fact that you're once again in the boat that you were a couple of years ago, which led to the Curtis Lazar signing, and that is you just don't have right shot centerman in the organization. And look, Jeff has written recently about on Canucks Army. JPAT has written recently about Nils Oman, who they're probably going to have to rely on to play fourth line center next year. I mean, unless they find some money to disperse at center ice after doing their shopping, or unless they strike out somewhere and then just reassess and redeploy their cap space, you're probably having to lean on Nils Oman and perhaps even at center ice next year on your fourth line. So I thought Sherwood actually played pretty well against the Canucks in the first. Yep. So, those are two interesting names for me in terms of your bottom six. And then he names a few right shot defensemen. Hakanpää in Dallas, who, needless to say, is a big drink of water there. If you like big defensemen, as Rick Tocchet does, and of course we saw last year with Soucy and Cole, and then, tripling down with Nikita Zadorov in season as an addition. Hakanpää's 6'5", 200, that's a big dude. Carrier in Nashville, who I also quite liked in that series. And in fact, I think he's got some second pair upside potentially, or at least could masquerade there. And then Josh Brown, who gets no love because he played in Arizona and is now in Utah. But that's a right shot defenseman, a bit of a late bloomer. That's a right shot defenseman who actually did a fair bit of offensive. Oh no, I got the wrong guy. He's the non-offensive guy. There you go. He's out of the under the radar. But he played in Arizona this year. Played 51 games, added 10 points. He has bounced around the league a little, but seems to have found a bigger role there in Arizona, and that's another big dude that the Utah Hockey Club would have if they re-sign him. He's another 6'5", 200-pounder. So,
yeah, by all accounts, he's never played more than 68 games, which he played 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a journeyman, but a depth guy, bloomer, by all means. Mm-hmm. You can try to find guys like that for sure.
Is there any?
And again, this is the category of player that the Vancouver Canucks can stick their chest out and say, we're good at this. We can find guys on the edges. So it'll be interesting to see who makes their cut this offseason.
Right.
And becomes the sixth defenseman, becomes the 11th and 12th forwards.
You're right. He would be a more on the margins guy.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Hakanpää and Carrier, you're looking at guys who are a little further up your lineup, or at least a little more solidified.
Well, certified every night guys.
Exactly.
Probably,
yeah. Is there any part of you that would be intrigued by Desharnais in Edmonton, who I know has been a healthy scratch some in the playoffs, but looking at big defenseman. That guy's a monster.
Yeah, the thing that they found in these three big guys that are pretty mobile, guys that I think are pretty good at skating. Darnay, I don't love his puck tracking, his puck IQ, that sort of thing. I don't know. He's never jumped out at me as a candidate. No. Mere size is not just the only criteria for me. So
yeah, if you're making a bid there, you're saying this is a late bloomer who has 114 NHL regular season games, and defensemen, especially big one, the Zdeno Chara rule, they mature and get to the point where they're their best selves a little later in life. He's 28 years old, Hronek. So,
I mean, I'd be more tempted for a guy that is a true deterrent, like a Brendan Dillon, at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And you get him probably much cheaper at 33, than you do. And he's going to be 34 at the start of the season. So, but find a right side guy. You might be more intriguing as well. So we'll see.
Big week ahead for the Vancouver Canucks and an enormous weekend for the British Columbia Lions. They beat the Calgary Stampeders 26-17 in their home opener in 2024. They do so before 53,788 fans. It's a record attendance for a BC Lions home opener. It's their seventh biggest crowd ever for a regular season game. And those that have eclipsed it took place in the old BC place that had a capacity up to 59,000. That is not a capacity that is attainable anymore in the new refurbished BC place. The last time they did 50,000 for a game was in September 2011, 52-13. That was for the first look at the new renovated, refurbished BC place, a game against Edmonton. That was in their last Grey Cup season. Team president Dwayne Vigneault, and Dwayne came in here, what was it, 3 weeks ago today, 2 weeks ago today, whenever it was. Dwayne was pretty bullish on this game and attendance beyond this game. Asked Amar Doman last week what the season ticket base is at. He said, we don't disclose that, but needless to say, it's larger than most years because for a lot of people, the Touchdown Pacific game was attractive. For a lot of people, the ability to buy Grey Cup tickets early was attractive. But here's Dwayne Vigneault to the province, quote, we want to be 40,000 or 45,000 or 50,000 every game. We think it can be done. And I say that because the last 2 years after the big season opening concert, look, 33 and 34,000, if I'm not familiar, you've seen the crowd go down to more
2/3 of that number.
Yeah. Regular levels, if you will. Crowds and don't get me wrong, Amar Doman has done a terrific job. But for example, last year they did the 33,000 against the Elks. Then they did 25,600. A couple weeks later against Montreal, they did 20,000. They did 23,900. They did 24,600. Again, a Calgary game that came in at 20. So you had, crowds that were, is it 2/3? Yeah. In some cases, 2/3, slightly more than 2/3. I don't dispute that you're going to see bigger numbers this year.
Well, I think they've said goodbye to the teens. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
For sure. A building that size, a city of this size, let's hope we've said goodbye to the teens for a good long time here.
Yeah. And I got some of those totals wrong. But yeah, they were between 20 and 26 for the other games last year.
Yeah. I mean, that's
ambitious from Dwayne.
It wasn't that long ago they were averaging 30. It really wasn't. We weren't kids.
No.
No. So, we're not.
I mean, 2011, 2012, they were still a really big deal. They were a really good ticket and a good house, game in, game out in those seasons. Now, it's a sensational ball club. right? They had stars aplenty, including at the quarterback spot, and Travis Lulay, who was an MOP that one year. They won a Grey Cup. We had asked on our poll question Saturday, is this the year the Leos snapped their Grey Cup drought? It's been 13 years, and a majority, 60%, are saying yes. As for the game, and look, they had 2 changes on the offensive line. You had another change in the secondary. We had talked about how those units have not quite yet gelled with some new personnel there, or personnel being asked to play larger roles. And it's a 17-up ball game, completely winnable for the visitors until BC bears down and gets the win. They get 4 sacks. They give up none. And, of course, this after Toronto really got into VA's face in the opener. They won the turnover battle. Alexander Hollins and Justin McInnes, both terrific 90-plus yard games, each had a touchdown.
And McInnes denied a big catch later that they had a penalty go in their favor, so it kept the drive alive. That was a catch, by the way. That was a catch.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought they were.
I don't like to call out suits, but he was saying the ball was moving. I didn't see the ball
didn't
moving.
see the ball moving either. No, I'm with you.
That was so. Add 40 more to McInnes' total.
Right.
By the way, we got to shout out Woods too. That the tap out of bounds was a spectacular.
Yes,
play.
it was. Yes, it was.
Heads up.
In the CFL, all you have to do is tap it out of bounds.
And that's good knowledge of CFL rules.
Very good knowledge of the rules for an American player. Quite right.
Sports philosopher Van on our live stream right here is calling out the integrity of the show. He says, lies, lies, lies. BC Lions crowd by the time the Lions won was half of what you just said. Half the crowd left by halftime.
We're just about to get to that.
Because the event, which was 50, just
we haven't even addressed that.
Have some integrity, Matt and Blake.
We haven't even addressed that yet. We're getting to it.
Vernon's Ben Laddock, 10 tackles, an interception, and 3 tackles for loss. Good thing they brought him back in free agency. They're on to Winnipeg Friday. And, of course, that is their hurdle. The Bombers have found every way to beat the BC Lions in the last few years. Now, you'll remember early in the season last year, BC went there and got a win, but when it mattered most, down the stretch, Winnipeg had a couple of wins over BC, including in the West Final for a second.
Well, the Bombers have found every way to lose so far this season.
Yes, they have. 0-2.
Yeah.
Now, as for the crowd dispersing, leaving early, and I saw there was all sorts of social media battles on this over the course of the weekend. First and foremost, yes, there were absolutely some people who were just there for the 50 Cent concert. No different than LL Cool J last year, no different than One Republic the year previous. The idea is bring in the big crowd. You know, some are leaving, some are staying. And do you convert them into CFL fans, or did they come back for another game? Secondly, the backyard party on the plaza began at 10:30 in the morning. I know our friend group got there at 2:00, Blake. So we're 2:00 on the plaza. We're having a drink. Thankfully, the rain held off. We get into our seats. 50 starts at 3:20 as opposed to 3:00. Game starts at 4:30-ish as opposed to 4:00. You know, by halftime or by the end of the third quarter, you've had you a day.
6 hours deep already.
Well, I mean, if you've got a young family or you've been boozing, right? Like, you're already pretty deep into your day. What matters is you bought a ticket. What matters is this: you got in the building and you were part of the fantastic scene.
Well, what matters too is the growth of that number. So the same ratio of people probably left in all those occasions, but there was 54,000 start rather than 34. So by the end of the game, start of the fourth quarter, there's still probably 34,000 people in attendance. But with the building the size that it is,
especially when you're not accustomed to seeing the upper deck full, and very few people had laid eyes on a full upper deck at BC Place. I mean, I guess the messy match would have been the last one, but there have been very few occasions, right?
But if you sporadically take out 20,000 people from BC Place, it looks kind of not awesome. but that's just the price of being in a massive building. That's still 30,000, over 30,000 people watching the game. It's a shame they all didn't have the same idea of, hey, let's move down. Like if everybody had moved down, it would have looked great at the end of the game still. But everybody was still up in the upper reaches. They panned out, and were there missing seats? Yeah, but there were still people in the final row, in the very last row of BC Place. So if they had condensed, you would have been like, oh, what a great game. What a great atmosphere. It was still loud. Go listen to it on TV. When they were putting together that final drive, it was loud in there because there's 30,000 people there. It was great.
And much like One Republic and LL Cool J before him, I thought Fitty put on a good show.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the full stage show with the dancers and the hype men. Wish you would have played Wanksta. You know how I feel about Wanksta.
I don't, and I don't know the song.
Grady? Nevertheless, he played his hits.
Jaw Rule sympathizer over here.
Don't know what that means.
He played his hits. Crowd had fun. Played in the club. Everyone got up, started dancing. Right? Oh, look, for the price of a game ticket, you're thoroughly entertained. I mean, you have zero problem with the entertainment value per dollar.
Some BC Lions were watching the concert.
Patrice Rene, Adrian Green came out. They were watching from the players' bench. So you got 45 minutes or whatever it was of the show. Then you got the football game. It's turned into a tradition now. It's turned into the event of the season in the spring for Vancouver. I mean, there's not anything else. There's not much else that's going to bring 50,000 Vancouverites out. I mean, what are you talking? Fireworks night? So, yeah, it was a fun day at BC Place.
Daddy, why are the girls shaking their butts on stage like that?
My dad was wondering, is this really a kids' event? I think that kind of falls on the parents to understand what you're
if you have not been to a rap show and you didn't know 50 Cent before this weekend.
That's on you.
The other thing I'll say is it was amazing to see the downtown core bubbling with people and the noise.
Yeah.
Like we parked here at Wall Center and walked down, Blake. There was a lot of people downtown. You could hear the backyard party from blocks and blocks away.
Well, just think.
And you saw a lot of the black and orange sort of filtering their way down to the corner.
Every spring there's a couple.
Amazing.
Every spring there's a couple Saturdays where the Whitecaps and Canucks play on the same day. But the Whitecaps will have 20,000. Canucks have 18, 19,000. You're still well short of 40,000 people in attendance.
This was 54.
This was like
a full another game.
Well, it's like a really well-attended Whitecaps game, like a 30,000 Whitecap game and a packed Canucks game.
Yeah.
And even then, probably
then you're short.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really cool seeing that many people down and around the stadium. And you know, I realize some of these bigger acts probably aren't going to do it in Regina or Winnipeg or Hamilton, but I think you have other markets around the CFL that if their owners were willing to pony up a little money on the front end and book one of these acts and just replicate this model, I think that could work in some of the other CFL markets.
We know the Big O is undergoing some renovations. You know, argue that what you will. But they've got,
it has forever been going through renovations, but from the moment
they're trying to make it so that it's safe to walk into it, which is, noble. But presumably when that is done and they've got new turf down there as well, Montreal should do it because, they can get an act.
Well,
and Toronto, obviously.
They used to do it for playoff games at the Big O. Like
but the opener,
50, 60,000 playoff games.
Put their opener and their closer at the Big O.
Yeah. Yep. No, and I would like to see other CFL teams do that because it created a huge buzz. And for those who said, it's not on TSN. Well, it was never intended to be on TSN. It was supposed to be for the live audience.
Yeah.
That's the idea of it. Plus, if you say to 50 cents people, and we're going to put it on TSN, he's like, you're making money off that. So suddenly the price goes up, right? So, no, it was always intended to be a live concert.
Mm-hmm.
Your concerts aren't typically on television.
No, I didn't see Pearl Jam on TV when they were here. No.
Yeah. although an interesting business model. Shout out to listeners Chris and Ellie, all the way from London, England. Saw two people in the lobby here earlier taking photographs. Well, let's go say hello. Chris and Ellie, who are Canucks fans from London, England, on their Canadian holiday. Thanks for stopping by. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta. Greta is a marvelous spot to catch the game. A quick walk to the rink or stadium. Go-to spot for food, drink, fun before and after the game. Make it a game night at Greta, including that awesome arcade, 50 West Cordova, or at gretabar.com. We'll talk to J-Pat here. Plenty to discuss on the Vancouver Canucks beat, whether it's Zadorov, whether it's the wingers, Guentzel, Laine, who we talked about on Friday, Hronek, Mikheyev, and more. And then Christian Covington, BC Lions defensive tackle, 9 years in the National Football League after graduating from Vancouver College and then Rice University. He's come home to play in his hometown. That was his first game outside of the preseason affair at BC Place since 8th grade. His father, of course, is the legendary Grover Covington, CFL sack artist from way back with the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
And Christian's pumped to be here.
Christian,
not a lot of former NFL guys, tenured NFL players come into the CFL and are stoked, but he is.
Oh, he lights up a room. We had him on an old edition of Wednesdays with, spent an hour with him back in the old radio days. He came in studio when I think he was playing for Dallas at the time, the Cowboys. And he tells us he wasn't done with the game. He wanted to keep playing. And if that meant playing in his hometown, even better. So marvelous interview coming up with Christian. Okay. Bet365 and our bets of the day. The segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner Sekeres Price. As we talked about on Friday, heading into Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final, no sense for Connor McDavid to hold back, right? With the series hole the Edmonton Oilers are in, go on out there, give it your all, shoot everything. So I'm going over 1.5 points on McDavid in Game 5 at -150.
Yeah.
They scored some goals Saturday.
I've got the exact same idea for Luka Doncic tonight for the Mavericks.
Right.
How many shots is he taking tonight?
41. Really, unless Kyrie is taking the shot, he should take it.
So, it's a high over under 32.5.
Yeah.
But I'm taking the over.
No. Well, especially he's had a couple of days to rest out here too.
Yeah, and he looked
right. They looked better.
He's so stiff entering the arena, but by the time warm-up's happening, he's looking okay.
Yeah. Might as well just shoot everything tonight, Luka.
Yeah.
If you're going down, go down in a blaze of glory.
That's right.
Both you guys. They're both magnificent magnificent players, right?
He could go 13 for 51 tonight. If he's not feeling it.
Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. J-Pat is next.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Joined now by Jeff Paterson of Rinkwide Vancouver, our Canucks reporter, with, let's face it, a busy couple weeks, Jeff. We're just sort of waiting for news, waiting for shoes to drop here on a number of fronts. Let's start with Filip Hronek, the big piece who unlocks much of the Canucks offseason. Do you think this is a long-term deal by the draft, or we're moving Filip Hronek proposition?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that I feel it's that dire. That I think the Canucks have some time here, that they know there are several options. None of them are particularly great financially for the Vancouver Canucks, in that Hronek's got most of the leverage here. And, if the Canucks can get some other deals done here, I think they can put Hronek on the back burner a little bit, knowing that ultimately he can take them to arbitration and he's got a strong case. And so I think they know they're going to take their lumps here, whether they get a deal done or not. I guess the question is, how much do they value this player? And I guess internally, if they come to a conclusion that, they don't value him the way that maybe we think they do, then perhaps we'll see a deal done to move him on. But look, they've been chasing a right shot defenseman that can play big minutes basically the entire time that I've covered this hockey club, which is a quarter of a century. And you can make a strong case that you can go the entire existence of the Vancouver Canucks, and it's an awfully short list of true right side top pairing guys that they've had in the fold. They gave up a lot to get him. I guess I'm just not convinced that they're going to be prepared to move off him, even at the price that he's going to command here.
So you think arbitration is an option then? You think the Canucks would be happy with doing the arbitration deal, basically kicking this can down the road, knowing you've got Hronek on a 1-year deal before UFA?
Yeah, I don't know that I want to be characterized as saying that I think they'd be happy with that, but I think that is an option. Now, we see, small percentage of arbitration cases that actually get before the arbitrator. So, one thing for a player to file for arbitration, that just buys them a little bit more time before, they can hammer out an agreement. But I just think any way the Canucks look at this, they know that the arbitrator is going to side with the player here. He played huge minutes. He put up massive points. And these are, the counting statistics that the arbitrator uses. And just any way you slice it, it's going to fall in Hronek's direction. So, that's why I come back to this idea that, internally, if they don't think that he is a player long-term that can complement Quinn Hughes and can continue to eat these minutes, and if they think he's more the second half player than he was the first half player, then sure, maybe they've got their eyes on some sort of move here, and the draft is definitely a time when the ground is fertile for deals to be made in the National Hockey League. Although we always say that going into the draft, and far fewer deals actually transpire, but you usually get 1 or 2 significant trades in and around the draft. And look, they're not going to have anything else to do on the first day, so maybe they can be busy over at their table making phone calls and pestering other teams that are focused on actually getting involved in the first round of the draft. So, it's funny. As we sit here on this Monday, exactly 2 weeks from July 1st, like it's coming quickly, and we know that the last general manager in this city declared famously that he ran out of time. They still have time in their hands, but with the draft in those 2 weeks, and even though they don't have a first rounder, their attention is going to be elsewhere here. They've got a lot on their plate. Like, time is ticking here on the Vancouver Canucks. Quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that they haven't been able to take care of some of their internal business here to allow them to, just lessen the amount of work that they have to do over these next 14 days.
If there is an unreasonable line in the sand from the Hronek camp, for all the reasons you just talked about with regards to arbitration, this is a valuable player. If he's everything that, you guys just talked about there with regards to the huge points and the elusive right shot defenseman, he's also a guy that has a tremendous amount of value, especially because he is young. If there's somebody out there with a right shot defenseman that's aging and they're not in that cycle of contending for a cup right now, there might be a deal to be had if, again, the number begins with an 8 and they're unwilling to bend off that. And if the Vancouver Canucks just say we can't do that, there are options here. Like, I think they like the player, Jeff. Do you think they love the player? Like, absolutely can't live without him, like in an Elias Pettersson kind of sense?
Yeah, I don't think they're at that point with this player, but I do think one of the factors, guys, you have to keep in mind is his partner had a 92-point season.
Mm-hmm.
I think you want to keep the captain happy. He is the driver of this organization, and not that he couldn't put up massive point totals with other players. We've seen him do that in years gone by, but he's coming off a career season, and he was locked to Filip Hronek, and the numbers showed, like, when they were out there, they were a legitimate dominant pair in terms of driving play and spending time in the offensive zone. And so it's not just Filip Hronek in isolation, it's the role that Filip Hronek had in boosting the superpowers of Quinn Hughes, and that is significant to the Vancouver Canucks. And so I think they have to be mindful of that. And again, could they go and try and find a replacement that could, find a rhythm with Quinn Hughes and allow Quinn Hughes? Like, Quinn Hughes is an incredible player. We know that on his own, but sometimes you're a product of the surroundings, and he and Hronek found something there that absolutely worked for them individually and for the team collectively here. So, it's never just one guy in isolation, but you're right. A 26-year-old right shot guy that came close to 50 points. And, this was a career high for Hronek, but it wasn't an anomaly. He's been a 40-point guy without playing full seasons in Detroit. So, I think he's realizing his potential here. And I know he didn't want to discuss it on that final day of the meetings, the exit meetings. He was hurt in the second half. That's an undeniable fact. It's been reported now. I saw with my own two eyes that arm was so heavily wrapped for practices. I would imagine it was that much, and then some probably for games as well. There was a reason we didn't see the big slap shot until Game 7 against the Edmonton Oilers, when I think he thought, like, I got nothing to save this for. I may as well just wind up and let it fly. And sure enough, he found the back of the net. So, there were factors and reasons why his production, at the very least, dipped in the second half. I think the Canucks have to be careful of separating the production from the performance. And, we get so focused in our business on goals and assists and ultimately the counting statistics. I think the Canucks have to take a long, hard look, and I'm sure they have, from every direction. Was it just his production that dropped in the second half, or did his performance dip in the second half? And there is a distinction to be made there.
Yeah. Elliotte Mikheyev, Frank Saravelli had the news on Friday, Jeff, that the Canucks have been calling around looking to move Mikheyev for some time now, actually, since last season after the Zadorov trade at the deadline, and again, since the end of the season. Where are you at on that? Are you willing to retain some salary? Are you willing to pay a sweetener if it means moving Mikheyev and his salary out?
Yeah, I don't like either of those options, but I mean, that's where they are if they want to move the player on the contract. I mean, option 3 obviously is to bring him back. And I'm not convinced that we wouldn't see the best version of Elliotte Mikheyev in his 3 seasons so far, this 4-year contract. Yeah, he got hurt in the preseason in his first year. We know that he played on a torn ligament, and obviously they had to shut him down. He didn't have last summer to train fully, and I just use Oliver Ekman-Larsson as an example of, you give a guy a full offseason to train and do the work and put in the effort, and you can come back and be a player. And look, I don't love the contract at the time of the signing, didn't love the contract, but if you look at the underlying numbers with Elliotte Mikheyev, like, defensively, he is still a legitimate National Hockey Leaguer. He doesn't hurt you in the defensive end. He doesn't help you offensively. And it is a little bit rich to have him in a bottom 6 position. I get that. But so many of these guys that, we've talked about the fact that so many of their penalty killers are on expiring contracts. I don't know if they have all those guys back. They didn't use him that much as a penalty killer. If he has a full summer, he can get some of that speed and that burst back. If he could take on penalty killing as one of his primary duties here, I think I could live with him for next season at that price point. And then maybe you get a player back that would attract a little bit more interest around the national. Either you get a player back that helps you, or the rest of the league isn't as wary of a guy that just came off a run of 1 goal in 61 games. Like, I can understand why teams are asking for some sort of sweetener here. You're just not trading that player straight up. There's just going to be no interest at his price point. So, of all the options, I do wonder if living with Elliotte Mikheyev at 4.75 for next season could be palatable if you get a guy back that is closer to the player we saw in the first half of the season. He takes on some added responsibility, maybe late games, protecting leads, those types of things. Because, again, I think the defensive side of his game and his mind is still there. What does he look like with a full off season to train and come back and hopefully hit the ground running?
One more year gets you that much closer to a palatable buyout too, if you do have to kick that can down the road as well. Your take on the poll question here, because everything went right health-wise and performance-wise for the Vancouver Canucks to give them the season that they had. In some ways, maybe you'd want to run it all back with most of the same players. Or you can just say, hey, that was a lot of planets aligning. We need to be better than we were. What do you think? Should they try to run it back? Will they try to run it back? Or do you think there's going to be a revamp of the roster?
I think in pro sports, change is inevitable. I don't think you're running it back entirely. It certainly sounds like a couple of guys at the very least have their foot out the door and want to explore free agency. And that's fine. That comes with the territory. Players work hard to get to this situation, to set themselves up for the big payday. And if it can't come here, I'm not going to begrudge any of them for testing the market in that regard. Also, running it back, and it was a fun 2 rounds. It was a terrific 13 games. It re-energized the city and the fan base and the marketplace. But ultimately, it was 7 wins where 16 were needed. I mean, there are areas that they have to get better, without a doubt. Now, having a healthy Thatcher Demko, would that have changed things? Having a healthy Brock Besser for Game 7, might that have tipped the scales? Yeah, maybe we can play that game all offseason. But, if you take the broader approach, they need help up front scoring. I think we all know that. I think they recognize that. I think Rick Tocchet had a defense core sort of molded the way that he liked. And so I can understand the reasons for wanting to keep as much of that intact and running that part of it back. But, for me, and I've said this before, and I've written about it at Canucks Army, the most important thing to happen for the Vancouver Canucks this offseason is to get star-level Elias Pettersson back. Because whatever else they do, whatever other money they devote, they are in for the long haul with this player, committed, the cap hit that goes up this offseason. They need him playing like a star. And if he does, there's a trickle-down effect. But the inverse is correct as well, that if he comes back and is not terribly engaged and looks like he did from the All-Star break and through the playoffs, there's a trickle-down there in that we're going to be wondering about the wingers and, who's going to get them the puck and help them create. So, I don't know that there's a whole lot the hockey club can do, and I'm sure whatever they can, they would. But so much of that is on Elias Pettersson to figure it out and come back and be in the right mindset and be, the best shape. Rick Tocchet has thrown down the gauntlet here, the challenge. I heard him recently talking about wanting Pettersson to be one of the top 3 players in terms of fitness level. that tells me that he's not in the top 3 right now, or at least he wasn't when he reported for last season. And so I think Rick Tocchet, has basically put the challenge at the feet of Elias Pettersson, and so much of the Vancouver Canucks success next season and the season beyond, it's going to flow through number 40. And what kind of Elias Pettersson do the Vancouver Canucks have moving forward?
The key transaction of the offseason, the acquisition of Elias Pettersson. Is that what you're saying?
Well, or the acquisition of a trainer for Elias Pettersson.
Whatever.
A big summer, of course. Yeah. No, but Jeff's right. Quite frankly, you don't have the resources available to you this offseason to revamp the roster to a contender status. You have to rely on some of your internals to get to that next step. And Jeff's a million% right that Pettersson being a star centerman is part of the equation. A healthy Filip Hronek is part of the equation, as well as is a healthy Thatcher Demko. So no, it's a very good shout, Jeff. Because they just don't have the cap space to be able to build upon what they have this year. And look, there's not a ton of internal improvement left. Like, I'm not sure how much better Quinn Hughes can get. I'm not sure JT Miller is getting better at this age of the game, but that's sort of the die that is cast for the Canucks for this coming season. At least we'll see a year from now when we're talking about this team and its roster. Jeff, does Guentzel at $9+ million entice you, or does a buy low potential trade on Patrick Laine entice you when we talk about that big gaping hole of scoring on the wing?
Yeah, Laine just doesn't feel like a fit to me for this organization, for Rick Tocchet particularly. I just can right now, I can feel that one kind of souring already and going sideways. And, we've seen that wherever Laine's gone. That, look, the talent's undeniable. And yet, for whatever reason, just so much noise around him. And for a coach that, demands the work boots are on and wall work and structure and system, I'm just not sure that Patrick Laine is the guy here. I think I'm ready for the Vancouver Canucks to take their best swing here in unrestricted free agency at Jake Guentzel. I mean, they've been linked to him. The history is there with the principals and the operators. So, I think that they are serious about taking a look here. Again, they need Elias Pettersson, but Elias Pettersson does need to be surrounded with better players. And certainly on this year's free agent front, I'm not sure that there is a better proven goal scorer than Jake Guentzel. So, that sounds like the big fish that's out there. It comes at a hefty cost. There's no doubt. And, Pettersson's contract kicks in. You got JT. This deal would be sort of in the middle between those two guys. We're not that far away. Obviously, Brock Besser's a year away from unrestricted free agency. Like, how many big contracts can you have? That's a question that they're going to have to answer here. And we've seen in other markets, if you go top heavy, you have to find efficiencies elsewhere. And that has held back certain other teams. So, that's a sort of a problem the Vancouver Canucks have to recognize. But, yeah, rather than trying patchwork and hoping, and they did a nice job of it last year, like credit where it's due. And it's why Patrick Allvin was in the running for general manager of the year. And Rick Tocchet was able to, make the most out of the group that he had. And he's the coach of the year, but Besser had a career season. Nils Höglander had a career season. Some of those unrestricteds that they brought in had career seasons. You can't bank on that every single year. And even with a guy like Besser, I'm not convinced that Brock Besser is a 40-goal scorer for the next bunch of seasons.
Nope.
I do think that he's got to be a 30-goal season scorer. I think he's proven now he can get to 40, that 30 has to be his baseline. But, maybe he takes a step back. Maybe Nils Höglander takes a step back as well. And that's where you need some other guys to step in here and fill that gap just on the goal scoring front. And Jake Guentzel would certainly do that. So, in terms of capitalizing on a re-engaged fan base, if the Canucks swing for the fences and were to knock it out of the park on July 1st, landing Guentzel, I think that would get the attention of the rest of the hockey world, but it certainly would carry this buzz through the summer months into next season here in Vancouver. So let's see how it all plays out. If they don't retain some of these pending unrestricted free agents, they're going to have the money to spend, certainly. And then it's a question of, there's two sides here. You can make your best pitch for Guentzel. Guentzel may have his eyes on playing somewhere else. Their family situations. I don't know what he prioritizes. I know at one point there was a suggestion that he didn't want to come to Canada. I think that's kind of been refuted now. But ultimately, the player gets the final say. And wherever he goes, he's getting his money. I don't think we have to be worried about Jake Guentzel on free agent frenzy day. He's getting his money. It's just a question, can the Canucks, put together enough of a compelling case for him to join some people that he's familiar with, to have a prime situation on a team that looks like, the building blocks are here for them to take a step forward, and he would be a big part of that. But, I would say to Canuck fans, yeah, I think people should be excited about the opportunity, but brace yourself that ultimately Jake Guentzel may decide to play somewhere else next season in the National Hockey League.
It's too bad that some of the young draft picks and prospects from a couple of years before Wielander and Lekramaki, like a Podkolzin, for instance, haven't had the traction. Because wouldn't that be nice right now to see, Podkolzin coming off an 18-19 no-goal season with more traction expected this coming season? Because they are close for Wielander and Lekramaki, but it's just not close enough that it can affect really what you're doing in this offseason, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think anytime you're trading as many first rounders as they have here in a short span, it is going to catch up to you. And I think we're at that point. And that's where, free agents and effective free agents and finding value in the free agent market. And they did a nice job of it last year. And that's what, this management group has earned the benefit of the doubt. I'm kind of excited to see what they do on July 1st and maybe even July 2nd and 3rd after some of the big fish come off the board. Can they extract some value out of free agency like they did with a guy like Pia Suter? And they waited a few weeks before they were able to land him last summer. But yeah, entry-level contracts are massive for teams that are taking on big salary commitments at the top of the roster. And that's where the Canucks are now. And so, we've spoken here recently about Podkolzin, and yeah, I want to believe, but I just feel like this is such a massive year for him, 5 years removed from his draft at 23 now. If we're having this same conversation a year from now about Vasily Podkolzin and hoping that this is now the year at 24, at some point, you've turned the page, and they're not there yet, but that's why I feel like this one is such a huge year. And then you look at Max Sasson and Atu Ratu, and I'm all for these guys getting an opportunity. Archie Baines earned that opportunity to get his feet wet in the National Hockey League, but he didn't really move the meter. He's not a difference maker. And where do you find difference makers? At the top of the draft. And so if you're peddling first rounders the way that the Canucks have here over the last 4 or 5 years, it is going to catch up to you. And that's sort of where I think they find themselves in the here and now.
Yeah, I caught your piece about Nils Oman on Canucks Army, and I think you're quite right. He's going to have to be the fourth line center next year unless Sasson or Ratu, and many believe, including Dave Hall at Canucks Army, that Ratu's better on the wing, unless one of those two guys can break through. Lastly, Jeff, for me on Zadorov, where's your sense on where this is going? And how big of a blow do you think Zadorov moving on would be to the Canucks? Not just the team on the ice, but sort of the culture and the dressing room and everything he brought there.
So this one feels to me like, I know we heard heading into the weekend that, last and final was coming and ultimatums and those types of things. And yet in my head, I sort of have this vision of Nikita Zadorov, standing at the doorway, waving to the Canucks saying, that's it. Bye. I'm going. Watch me walk away. And meanwhile, the whole time, like, mouthing, I love you. Please. Like, if there was a split, I feel like we would have seen the split happen now. And it feels like there's a deal there. We heard a couple of weeks back now, or I kind of lose track of the full timeline, but it wasn't that long ago that we heard that, he loved it here so much, he'd be willing to take a little bit of a haircut to stick around and stay. But what is that number? Knowing that he's probably going to get his number on the open market, but it certainly feels like from a family perspective, the fact that the way the fans reacted and embraced him, like this feels like the place that he wants to be. And I keep coming back to myself and wondering, if it has to start with a 5, and if that's the holdup, like, can the Canucks, there was industry chatter that the Canucks had, gotten into the high 4s with Zadorov, and that wasn't enough. And I wonder if it's as simple as if they can get to a 5, and I don't think term's a massive issue. Like, I think he obviously wants term as an unrestricted free agent, but, I don't think the Canucks would have a huge issue going 5 or even 6 years with a player who, at 29, like I think he can continue to be the player that he has been, into his early 30s, even into his mid 30s. And, we saw a resurgence from Tyler Myers. We've seen Ian Cole play at a high level, well into his 30s as well. I think as a sort of stay-at-home defenseman, although Zadorov loves to roam too, but, a big physical guy. I think he can do what he does and be successful at it well into his 30s. So I don't think the Canucks should have fear on term here. It is a question of dollars, and every penny matters in a salary cap world. And, I keep coming back to this idea in my head, at least, where does he slot on the depth chart? Because they've got Quinn Hughes and Carson Soucy on the left side. It looks like he'd be a third pairing guy, but by his usage in the playoffs, he certainly was more than a third pairing defenseman. And so he's a little bit of a tweener in that regard. $5 million a year for a guy that can give you 20 minutes of ice time and kill penalties and bring some swagger and some intimidation. Again, the premium you're paying, I think, is for the playoffs. It's not so much for the regular season with this player, but man, you'd love to have him on your side and not have to face him if you get into the postseason. So I'm not ready to shut the door here, and I don't think either side is. At least that's my read on this thing, is that they both want to get a deal done, but somebody's going to have to budge just a little bit, and we'll see if it happens.
Yep. Wholeheartedly agree. The longest goodbye with Nikita Zadorov. Quite right, Jeff. Marvelous stuff, sir. Thank you for this, and we will we'll catch up next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye. See ya.
I'll talk to you.
Long. Farewell. Gonna miss you.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now playing in summer condition and rave reviews. Blake and I were there last week. Simply put, magnificent. Absolute joy to play that golf course. And with the extended daylight in June, take advantage of the afternoon twilight rates. The amazing evening sunsets there in Whistler. To book your twilight time or anytime during the 2024 season, visit whistlergolf.com. And Bryson DeChambeau wins his second U.S. Open in dramatic fashion. That's the first thing I want to say is
Crazy.
We have had a number of men's majors that have sort of petered out, more coronation than competition down the stretch.
One big name, the rest not so big names.
Something like that.
Yeah.
We had a good finish to the PGA and now an even better finish to the U.S. Open with a bunker shot that will live for the ages from DeChambeau on the 772nd hole. Looked at some stats on that, Blake. A 55-yard bunker shot to 3 feet 11 inches. The chances of hitting it inside 4 feet, roughly 1.7% for pros in that spot.
Never
So
mind just the stakes too.
Oh,
So that
yeah.
doesn't take into
That's-
account stakes.
that's on a Thursday at the John
Right,
Deere,
right.
let alone on a Sunday
Yeah.
at the U.S. Open at Pinehurst number.
Knowing how
Two.
fast those greens are too. So knowing that even if you kind of put it where you want it to go, does it run out
Right.
past the hole?
Right. I mean, there's not many 55-yard bunker shots that run out.
Right.
I mean, that in itself was kind of crazy. I mean, the discussion was, is he going to fly it there
right.
from that distance? Poor Rory McIlroy. 10 years since his last major championship. He bogeys 3 of the last 4. Blake, this season on tour, he had been perfect in 496 attempts from inside 3 feet. He misses the 2 short putts down the stretch from 30 inches and 45 inches. Again, the stats guys looked at that. They figure it would happen maybe one time in 582 attempts by a tour pro.
I like Rory. I don't love Rory, but I respect him and think he's a hell of a golfer. I felt so bad for him.
Crushed.
Like, and you know what? He now is numb to it. I think. Like, obviously, he didn't talk to reporters, so he's not. It's not. I'm not saying he doesn't have any emotion around it, but visibly, when you saw those shots of him watching on the monitor, I actually didn't see much disappointment. I think he is catatonic about it. Like, he just cannot believe it's an out of body experience at this point for him, that he's his own worst enemy, that he just can't break this 10-year jinx. And he's probably wondering if it'll ever happen again.
He has been so close at so many majors, including this year. And yes, he's got to feel, although this one was his own agency. Let's not forget.
Well, no, for sure.
Like, this is one where if he makes one of those 2 putts, he's in a playoff. If he makes both of those putts, he's lifting the trophy.
On 3 bogeys in the final 4 overall, and by putting or other.
It's a 2-shot lead late.
Yeah.
So you've got to close that out when you're that level of player on a golf course like that, in a competition like this. The other thing, Blake, he pulled driver on 18 to start the trouble. Nick Faldo on the Sky Sports side of things was apoplectic, going, you hit 3-wood to 130 yards yesterday.
What's wrong with that? Yeah.
Like, what's wrong? So you wonder whether there was a decision-making error there from Rory. And then you got to hand it to Bryson. I mean, Blake, he's in the native grass all day. And got so many lucky breaks in there too. Like, you need a little good fortune to win, and Bryson had some of that as well. Do you think Rory should have done the post-round interviews? Do you begrudge him at all for that? Because DeChambeau did the interviews last month when he finished second to Xander Schauffele at the PGA. Now, granted, not in the same heartbreaking fashion.
These are his personal run here makes it somewhat extenuating circumstances. Like, if he won a major last year, for instance, I'd be very disappointed that he doesn't do the post-game interviews. Given what he's going through right now, I understand it. I always prefer that they speak, and it gives us so much more color on the painting, if you will. So yes, but not as much as I would normally be. Like, let's say he's got a major even 2 years ago. I'd be pretty disappointed he doesn't do the post-game interviews.
Now, the other story from this golf tournament is Bryson the entertainer. And is he corny? Yeah. Does he try too hard? Yeah. Is he inauthentic? Some would argue yes.
He wants to be a man of the people so badly.
But he clearly enjoys the spotlight. He clearly enjoys being amongst the big crowds, which you don't get as much on the LIV Tour. And golf needs showmanship and personalities, particularly in this split of the best men's players on 2 tours. His quote, "If I'm going to be quite frank, I hope we can figure things out quickly. All I want to do is entertain," he said, with regards to these rumors that the PIF and the LIV Tour are ready to make a deal here, announce another deal with the PGA Tour. I used to say this about Mickelson, and way back when we were having the Tiger Phil debate. I realize Phil's a phony, but I appreciate the effort he makes with the galleries on site. Followed Tiger Woods once at Royal Montreal, and it didn't really. I mean, once you get over the first awe of being around Tiger Woods and watching Tiger Woods hit a ball, and this was back when in his heyday, Blake. The rest of it felt like, an exam. You have to be so quiet. Stevie's going to yell at you, and Tiger doesn't pay any attention. So laser focused, he's not even acknowledging the people in his midst. I like when they acknowledge the people in their midst. The people have paid good money to go on out there and cheer them on and support them.
Tiger getting mad at cameramen late in his heyday was always frustrating for me as well. I'd
rather have this guy, even if he comes off as trying too hard and a little corny,
and Phil,
than someone who doesn't.
Phil duped me. Like I got mad at Phil with the live stuff, but for the most part, Phil as a PGA Tour professional, he duped me. If that's phony from Phil, then I got duped because I quite liked his persona. I thought it was a lot of fun, and
he just had a rep as a tally light guy, that he was a different guy.
And I read all that stuff, but I don't see that as a fan. So
exactly.
It worked for me.
We keep it up for 25 years, then it becomes reality, right?
It's exhausting. Like Arnold was able to do it, but very few others are able to be glad handy super sunshine guy.
Right.
24/7, 365 for a 30-year career
player.
Right. And be that level. So I mean, maybe that was just a survival mechanism for him, but
Palmer, Trevino, Mickelson, and if DeChambeau's the next in that pantheon, so be it. I mean, the other thing is it's not too long ago, 5 years ago, when he won his first U.S. Open, that a lot of people, myself included, thought he would change the game. And there is still no greater show in golf than watching Bryson with drive.
Yeah.
It is extraordinary. I mean, it's John Daly-esque, right? He's way past parallel, with a better physique, and of course, better equipment now. I mean, that one drive that he hit over the tree line, would it settle at 389? Like 15, 20 yards past everybody else.
But he did play the course exactly how we all anticipated he would.
Mm-hmm. Even if it meant missing fairways and getting into trouble. And it's the other thing. He is so strong. He can get it through that wire grass where other guys weren't able to.
Yeah. The other big story, of course, is the Canadian story.
Yes, sir.
And it's not going to be the Abbotsford boys representing Canada at the Olympics. And I certainly wish that for Hadwin. I don't know that Hadwin or Connors, I know Deserve's got nothing to do with it, but neither one of them is playing, perfect peak Corey Connors or Adam Hadwin golf right now. But they were going up against each other as the two sort of makeable spots for the Olympics, and Connors wins the duel with a 9th place finish. He needed to finish above 11th, and he does. So both he and Pendrith, congratulations to survive. And we were hoping going in with 7 Canadians. We're thinking, I said, I think it's almost a guarantee one Canadian gets into the top 20 with that many numbers, and ended up being 2 inside the top 12. That's a nice showing in a survival course like that for 2 Canadians to be in the top dozen. That's a really nice showing.
Corey Connors needed a minimum solo 11th going into Sunday's play to leapfrog. Hadwin, he finishes tied for 9th, even par through the golf tournament. And really, Blake, even par is nothing to sneeze at when was 9 golfers?
Yeah.
8 golfers finished under par. Believe it or not, Taylor Pendrith had a route into the Olympic team. He needed a minimum 2-way tie for 3rd to get on in. Pendrith played pretty well this week as well. T16 +3 for the tournament, +2 on the final day too. So he was right there. And here's the margin by which Connor, and don't ask me how this is calculated, but Connors finished at 2.485. Hadwin finished at 2.447.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but
it's official golf world rankings points. Don't ask me how they come up with it. Just know it was that tight between the 2 Canadians for the spot on the Olympic
Nick Taylor, obviously the other.
Yes, of
Olympian,
course, Abbotsford's.
Yes.
Nick Taylor. Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. GolfNorthlands.com. Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great clips. It's going to be great. We're joined now by BC Lions defensive tackle, the pride of Vancouver. He is playing his first season with the Lions after a 9-year NFL career. It's our pleasure to welcome back to Sekeres Price, Mr. Christian Covington. How you doing?
Oh, doing excellent. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Long time no talk. Glad to have you back in town here. Appreciate you coming back to your hometown and playing in the league. How about this?
I don't know. It's been nothing short of a blessing. It feels amazing to be back home. It feels great to be back where it all started. So no, it's been a great start to the year.
So outside of the preseason game, that's the first time you've taken the field at BC Place since high school. Of course, you played at Vancouver College, and
the ears don't pop when you go through the airlock anymore. A whole different thing now.
What was it like to be back in our stadium here playing for the faithful as a Lion?
It was great. I have so many memories of attending BC Lions games as a kid. Obviously, I was fortunate enough to play there in grade 8 for our grade 8 championship, which we lost to STM, but I haven't really been able to, take the field in a game setting really since that time, because obviously once I was near the end of my high school years, obviously everything got moved to Empire Stadium. So no, it was great to be back. It was great to be around, such great guys. Great to be on. It was good to be on such a great team and to be able to, win that home opener with a crowd like that. That was just, you couldn't have asked for anything better than that.
How comfortable are you feeling in a new system, back to the rules that I don't know how much 3-down football you've actually played, but you know
Zero.
them. Yeah, but you know them. Head start on a guy from Alabama coming up, obviously. Just talk about the first couple of weeks here. What's the transition been like?
It's still been an adjustment, so to speak. I can't lie and say that it's been like, it's been a seamless transition and it's been, there's been no hiccups whatsoever. No, it's still there's still a process, no matter, how much experience you have in football, no matter how many years you've had playing this game. And even though I've known the game, I've watched the game, this is truly my first time ever playing the Canadian game with the Canadian rules. So this is something that, it's been an adjustment, but, slowly but surely, I'm meshing with it. I'm gelling with it. I'm really starting to gel with, my teammates and the rest of this defense and this D line. So, and it was nice to put together a win as an entire team in all 3 phases of the game. So that was just, tremendous to see, tremendous to be a part of, especially for the home opener that we had.
Yeah, the 1 yard off the line of scrimmage is a big adjustment for linemen. Did Dad give you any pointers on that?
Don't jump offside. Don't line up offside. Don't jump offside. Don't do it. Don't you do it.
For those who don't know, his father, Grover, is a CFL Hall of Famer, a legendary pass rusher with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I saw him in the stadium on Saturday. We actually sat in the same section as the Covington family. My God,
yeah.
Covington family turnout for this game, Christian. How many people did you have there?
I can't say. Do you want a number? I got a number.
Yep.
I want to say, as far as as far as family was concerned, I want to say there's only maybe 5 or 6 of us that were there. But as far as the total people, everybody, family, friends, people that I just known my entire life, people that I grew up with, people who supported me my entire life. So yeah, I want to say roughly 30, 35 people.
Oh, very good.
Okay.
I think Dad's still smiling. After your sack late there, they went back to him 3 downs later, and he was still ear to ear, stretching the cheeks. He was I think he was happy that you got that one out of the way now, and the landslide can happen, right?
Absolutely.
Getting that sack on Father's Day weekend in front of Dad at home, Christian. Yeah. I mean, please, that had to be so special.
Oh, it was a blessing. That's the one way I have to describe it. I knew that there were a lot of there are some expectations that I know that are put up for me coming into this league, not only because of my experience down in the NFL, but namely because of a certain man named Grover Covington. And it's one of those things where I know that it was kind of, yes, it was relief, yes, it was kind of nice to get that monkey off my back. Just being able to just get that first sec out of the way. with my CFL career. But it's one of those things too where I'm just like, I know he's proud of me, but he also doesn't want. I know my dad well enough to know that there is no pressure. There is no, like, everybody wants to joke around. It's like, oh yeah, only 156 more to go. I'm like, yeah, thanks, I get it. But he knows that we were two different types of players. Obviously him being a defensive end and me being a defensive tackle. And just he knows that he's proud of me no matter what, no matter how my career has been. No, I mean, at the end of the day, he's proud of me for the fact that I was able to achieve my dream of being in the NFL. Something that he himself only got a slight chance in the early in his career to even see. So that alone, I know, made him made him such a proud dad. And I know it means that much more to him for me to be able to be in this league and to be able to start to see success early on. So and again, it's just one of those things. I know I just want to continue to build on what I can help, how I can help this team, in any way, shape, or form. But at the end of the day, too, I know I want to make him proud as well. But he knows that this is my path. This is, this is my journey. This is my football, story that that I'm writing right now, that I'm playing. So I know he's proud of me no matter what.
Comfort in the system obviously is going to be key, and you touched on that already. Is there anything else that you want to do to adjust to the Canadian game? Do you need to get lighter? And I'm just asking that open-ended. I'm not a suggestion from my seat at all, but have you noticed, maybe I should do X more? Is it, anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, no, you kind of hit it on the head right there with the whole the aspect of being a little bit lighter, getting your conditioning up. I mean, this game is faster. Everybody knows that the CFL it's a passing league at the end of the day. It's three down football. It's a lot more passing. It's a bigger field. One more guy, one more wide receiver, one more DB on the field. So it's set up to be able to play a lot faster and you're on the move a lot more. And that's one of those. I mean, even before it was official that I came in here, I came in with that mindset of just like, this offseason I wanted to switch it up, like with my diet, with my workout, with my training, with my offseason regimen. So I know, even before all this even came into fruition with me coming to BC, I'm weighing 275 now. So I'm 275 right now. Last season with the Chargers, I was hovering around 310, 315. So
wow.
That's just something. Yeah, I took that upon myself to be able to, I knew no matter what system I was going to be in, I just wanted to be able to do something drastic and wanted to be able to just do something for me to be able to help prolong my career. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that I'm in a passing league now. I'm in a fast-paced league right now. So it actually timed up perfectly in that regard. However, also there's always so much more you can do. A lot more, obviously more film study, more time being able to just spend time with my teammates to be able to build that chemistry, build that chemistry with the D line, because at the end of the day, the defensive line chemistry has to be on point to be able to know the ins and outs of the guy to your left, your guy on the right, to know how do they work, what is their skill set, what is their go-to on first and second down, how are they going to play the run versus certain blocks versus certain schemes. So to be able to understand the guy to my left and the guy to my right on an intimate football level like that will only help myself, this defensive line, this defense, and obviously this team.
Well, I mean, if I had a nickel for every first-year Canadian defensive tackle I've seen down on all fours in between snaps with that 20-second play clock. So that was good counsel that you got to drop, I guess, 40 pounds here to play this position in the CFL. Talk to me about 50 Cent. I saw Adrian Green and Patrice Hronek out there catching most of the concerts. So it sounds like Coach Phillips just released his guys to go watch 50. Did you catch any of 50?
No. No, I did not. Fortunate. It would have been nice to see, but I was and I heard he brought the house down. My family was there. Everybody told me it was a great event, great atmosphere. Obviously BC Place was rocking, but things like that for me personally, I'm just like, when it's game day, it's funny. Everybody who knows me, they know me as a happy-go-lucky guy. I'm a nerd off the field. heck, I'm just like, I'm that kind of guy. But then when it comes to game day, like I have to like flip the switch. So for me, I was just like kind of in my zone, in my locker room, walking around, pacing around, and just like doing my own thing, just doing my own pregame routines. But no, I heard it was a great concert, man. I heard he put down the show. Hey, all love for 50 Cent, man. Love him, love his work, love G Unit, man. So yeah.
Hey, answer me this. I mean, 9 years in the NFL, you made a lot of money. And you know, football isn't easy on the body. What made you decide to come up here and play the Canadian Football League after such a successful run in the NFL?
I wanted to keep playing. This game is this. I'm not done with this game, and I know this game isn't done with me. So, last year was humbling, from a certain aspect of just being able to, you know, for the first time experience what it was like to not play on game days. It was first time just being on a practice roster. It was at the end, it was very humbling, but it was also very just taxing. It was taxing on me mentally, taxing on me emotionally, taxing on me spiritually, because I just know like, hey, I was 29. I was 29 last year, going into my 9th year. I was just like, I was young. I'm like relatively young for, a guy of my experience. And so for me to be able to just have that hunger still, it just, I knew that obviously I needed film. I needed to be able to get back on the field. And the previous season with the Chargers before, I had torn my pec in November. So yeah, it was a point that I made to myself that I miss this game. I want to play this game. And yeah, there was an offer. And then obviously going into my 10th year now, playing professionally. I'm only 30 years old. Again, it's a blessing that I can say that not a lot of people have time on their side with that much experience in the game of football professionally. And so I just knew for a fact, like, yes, there was going to be an opportunity for me to, potentially maybe sign with the team in training camp. Yeah, maybe just play the waiting game and, maybe wait and see what can happen during the season if somebody needs a call from a veteran, if a team needs a call from a veteran defensive tackle. But this is something where I'm just like, I had been out of the game, not including last NFL season's preseason games. I hadn't played a regular season game in a long time. I hadn't been involved in a physical game in such a long time, and I just missed the game. I want to get back out there. This is something that I've been dreaming about doing since I was 5 years old. This is something that my father instilled in me at a very young age. He never pushed me to play football. It was actually my mother who pushed me to play football. This is something that I've just wanted to do my entire life. And so when the opportunity kind of just presented itself to realize that, maybe the next step for my career is to be able to come back home and see how the football journey unfolds, being up north. I decided to take it and run with it. And what better place to do that in the place that, that gave me my first opportunity to play football, which gave me my first, which gave me, the insights and the drive to be able to, leave home, to be able to go down south and make a name for myself. And obviously for me, I just wanted to be able to come back home and do the same thing. Once I realized, like, it's looking like it's going to be in that direction, I just decided, why not? Let's just go. I want to do this. Let's go home, and I want to play ball. I want to play ball in front of my hometown. I want to help this team, obviously, win a Grey Cup, and that's what I want to do. I want to win a championship.
We're glad we get you at 30.
Yeah,
we got a bunch of good years of Christian Covington.
That's right.
So we're happy.
You are going to play till they come for your equipment, then, right, Christian?
Yes. Oh, that's the plan. No, my goal my entire life has always been. My dad played 11. I'm playing 12 minimum. That's always been my goal. God forbid, God forbid any injuries or anything like that. Obviously, major injuries that prevent me from playing. But no, my goal has always been 12 minimum, and so that goal has not changed.
I know you wore 95 down south. Why 56 with the Lions?
So 56 was actually my first number that I ever chose for myself playing football ever. They gave me my first year playing football. They gave me 77 because of my dad. I did not like it at all. Too much pressure on an eighth grader. And then the next year, JV, they gave my first year of JV. They gave me 52. I'm like, it was a cool number. But then the next, the second year JV and the first year that I was able to actually go to varsity, it was the first time I was actually given the opportunity to choose my own number. And I decided, 50. I love 56 for some reason. You know, it was for two reasons. A, you know, my dad was born in 1956, so it's obviously a little sentimental value in the number itself. And then 56 was also Lawrence Taylor's number. So I'm just like, you know what? It's another football legend, another football great that I aspire to be like on the field. But it was, you know, still like my own number, so to speak, because of like the correlation that people would put with football and myself and my father. So it's just like, yeah, you know what? I'm Grover's son. Yeah, I'm a Covington, but nah, like this, I'm not going to be 77. It was football. And so I was once I got 56, it stuck with me. I was 56 throughout the rest of my high school years. I was 56 when I went down to Rice University. So yeah, 56 has just always been my number. And then obviously when I got drafted to the Houston Texans, there was a certain somebody that by the name of Brian Cushing. And I wasn't taking that number. So I just decided I kind of had literally the day I got drafted, I got a call from them. They're like asking me like, Mike Parsons was the equipment manager for the Texans at the time. He called me. He's like, "Hey, Christian, congratulations. What number do you want? Because but you just so you know, 56 is already out of the question." I'm like, "Yes, sir. I already understand that." And I was thinking to myself, you know what? If you take 56 and flip it upside down, it's 95.
There you go.
Last question. Have you been made aware about this Winnipeg hurdle that the Lions are up against, and what are your thoughts on the next game here?
I may have heard one or two stories. I may have heard one or two stories.
The hurdle is lying down on the track right now, though.
True.
So.
The hurdle's 0-2. How do you feel about going in there on Friday against?
I started watching film on them yesterday, and obviously hearing the stories, hearing about obviously this Western battle, this Western, you know, rivalry between, you know, two formidable teams such as the Lions and the Blue Bombers. You like looking at the recent history of these two teams. Obviously, this is the team to, you know, beat in the West. And so personally, I don't care what their record is right now. I don't care. They could be 0-5. I don't really like. It's just one of those teams where you never take an opponent for granted, especially in a league like this where there's only 9 teams. And at the end of the day, I have to give respect where respect is due for Winnipeg. Like they are always going to be, they're always going to be that team that no matter what the record is, you have to show up on game day. You have to show up with that right mentality and the right mindset as a team, as a unit, as a collective body of an organization, because it's going to take the collective unit to be able to beat a team like them. So, obviously doing some more study on them, continuing on today. Going to be obviously going into them, you know, detailing them extensively with the guys coming in later this week too. But no, I don't take nothing for granted going into this game. They're you know, a solid unit offensively, and you know, obviously they got Colorado's you know, at quarterback number 8, and he's been a formidable quarterback his entire career up north here. So you know, this is a team that we don't take lightly. This is a team that we know the implications of a Western opponent. And we know what it's going to take to be able to come out victorious on, this week.
Well, we're looking forward to it here because that is the derby right now for the Lions. Get through that team and get to a great cup. Christian, you were always tremendous with your hometown through your journey in NCAA and NFL football. Great to have you back home, my man. Thank you for the time. Appreciate this.
No, thank you guys so much.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.